And we have no doubt that after tonight, you will realize the benefits of incorporating this incredible technology into your practice. So without ado, we'll introduce ourselves. I am Dr. Courtney Rubin, and this is Dr. Debbie Parnes, and we are Phamily Orthodontics. I'm going to hand it over to Deb to give a little background about the two of us and how our love affair began.
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I know how hard it can be sometimes on a weeknight, Thursday night. Hopefully it's a weekend start for most of you. So I started Phamily Orthodontics just over 7 years ago. I purchased the practice from a older gentleman who at the time that he retired was 70 years old. And prior to that, worked as an associate in multiple offices for about 3.5 years. And the previous owner retired just before the pandemic started, and right when Dr. Rubin came on board. And Courtney and I have known each other for over 20 years because we were in the same freshman dorm at Parnes. And like lo and behold, ended up in the same city, and our stars aligned at just the right point in time for Courtney to join the practice. Prior to her joining, we had done a lot of just texting about cases from our individual offices and realized that we shared treatment philosophies. And then we also just sort of shared practice philosophies, both with a very open mind. We like to adopt technology. We're not afraid of change. I think that we probably both make each other more confident with accepting change and trying things, such as giving a live webinar or lecture. We kind of set out a goal to be a fully digital practice. We work with aligners, we work with Lightforce, and Grin was a perfect complement to that. And we started working with Grin. We have November on here, but I guess officially maybe December 2020. It's worked out really, really well for us, which you will see during our presentation. So here's our agenda for tonight. We are going to talk about what is Grin, particularly for those of you who might not be users yet. I know when we first onboarded, we genuinely had no idea. And I kind of appreciate that part of Grin's branding. Why we Grin, the advantages to Grin, how we Grin, where we'll really go through the logistics of how we incorporate Grin into our practice on a day-to-day basis, and as well as our patient response to Grin.
All right, so to start off, what is Grin? Some of you may know, some of you may not. Just going to go over just a really brief introduction. This is Grin. It is a pretty much orthodontist developed dental monitoring platform. It allows for communication between us and our patients, and doing so, we're using an FDA approved register scope. It is definitely advertised as a dental monitoring platform, but it's really so much more. It's allowing you to grow your practice, to do remote consultations, patient management tools, and all in a HIPAA compliant communication suite. So this is the Grin scope, which is the main technology. It is FDA registered medical device. It attaches to the camera on your cell phone. It comes in 2 sizes, a regular size and a mini size. And it allows you to just clearly visualize your patients intraorally. As you can see in the picture on the bottom, you're getting just a clear, 180-degree view of the patient's mouth. This is the Grin Doctor Portal, which is what allows you to communicate with your patients. You can use it on both your laptop, desktop, and on your phone. So it allows you to use it anywhere, anytime, on your own schedule. Can be used for your virtual consultations, remote monitoring, and then just even text messaging with your patients, which is really the main way that we use it to be able to communicate with our patients on a daily basis. The Grin patient app is what the patient will actually download onto their phone. It's how they are able to scan their teeth, and then it sends it directly to us. Again, this is HIPAA compliant. I am the HIPAA manager in our practice. So this makes me very, very proud to have a HIPAA compliant platform. But it's super easy. The patient texts you directly from their phone, and then I can even use my phone to text them directly
through the app.
Through the app, of course. I'm not giving them my cell phone. I already made that mistake a couple of times. I know I kind of brushed over that, but I think the most important part of our presentation tonight is why we grin and how we grin and our patients' response to this. So I know we have Kevin and a couple of other reps on tonight who are going to be happy to answer your questions specifically on the actual appliance, but I think this is the most important part of our presentation. So feel free to ask questions during our Q&A at the very end about that.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I was going to mention about like the Grin scope that I don't think we had on our slide was that it is top rack dishwasher safe. And so
someone's saying that they're not seeing any slides. Jillian?
Oh, yep. I'll take care of that in the chat.
Okay. Just double checking, making sure y'all can see the presentation.
Can everybody see? Are we okay there? We think?
You're totally fine.
Okay, cool. Onward and upward. Yeah.
All right. So why we grin? So there's a number of different reasons why we decided to use Grin, but based on the timing that, you know, as you can guess, when we onboarded at the end of 2020, the initial sort of interest in Grin was a result of COVID-19. It shut down our office, as I'm sure it did everybody else. And for 2 months, we did not see a single patient in the office, not a single emergency, which we try to remind ourselves when patients call us with emergencies now. And during that time, we set up with our web developer a virtual appointment option on our website. So we sort of got into the habit of doing virtual appointments for retainer checks, phase 2 pending checks, aligner checks, keeping it pretty simple. But it was new to us and definitely was providing some advantages, although very quickly we learned the disadvantages as well, you know, and the limitations of the system on our website. So we would guide patients to the website, and then it took us to this page that you see here on the screen, where we provided instructions on the photos to take. We had like a very limited form for people to enter their information, as well as like if they were a current patient or a new patient. I think that we've really maybe only in like the last 3 years had 3 or 4 new patients actually use this function. So it was mostly used for our active treatment patients. And this was a HIPAA compliant form that, you know, our web developer added. We did pay a monthly fee for it as well. We put videos on our Instagram highlights on like how to take the photos. I can tell you for sure that no one's photos ever looked like they did in this example here. They looked more like this.
Yes, these are the photos that we got to review. You can see not clear at all.
This was like just one day of virtual appointments that came through, and pretty much every time we had virtual appointments, they all looked like this. And we're looking, you know, crooking our necks sideways to try to see enough information that we can, sometimes emailing to, you know, request info. And the way we got these photos sent to us was we would get an email. We had to log into the email every time because it was HIPAA compliant. Then we had to download all the photos, download the form separately to read who the patient was. Really quite cumbersome. And then I never was saving the photos. I figured we could always backlog and find them if we absolutely needed to. But like every email that came to us just said virtual consult, had no patient identifiers. So not very simple to kind of track our patients or go back to patients using this tool. It got us through the pandemic, but it was not a long-term solution for virtual appointments. but it made us realize, you know, kind of the early value of virtual appointments. So other reasons that we decided to Grin, to do more virtual appointments. We have a pretty packed office schedule. We've been very fortunate to be a growing practice, particularly with having 2 doctors. You know, we really set out to make that a goal of ours, so we could support 2 doctors. And so we fill up 3 columns of active patients, you know, a consult column each day. And each year as we're growing, we're like, we need somewhere else to put these patients. We need to either see them less often in the office, you know, kind of troubleshooting what can we do. We were landlocked in our offices, and this next slide here, you know, shows our practices. So we have 2 office locations. Both of them have 3 clinical chairs and 1 consult room chair. You can see like neither of them are very large. I think our Wayne office is 1,100 square feet. Our Paoli office is like maybe 1,200 square feet. So certainly limited by space. And even though we have 2 offices, which means we could hypothetically be open, you know, 5 days a week in 2 spaces, we don't have the staff for that. We've been very fortunate to have an awesome team. I think at least one of our team members is on here tonight. So thanks, Jen, for joining us. But it's really hard to find great team members, which has made it really difficult to open both offices, you know, a maximum number of days. And then personally, you know, doctor lifestyle, we didn't want to be working more despite our growth.
And our family growth.
Yes. And so, you know, one of the main reasons, at least for myself personally, is I've got 3 little ones at home. This is our youngest. He just turned 1 this past weekend, baby Hayes. And he made the office be my 4th baby. You know, at one time I bought the practice, my oldest was 3 months old. So it was him and the practice. And then my middle is 3.5 years old, and then he's 1. There's just no way to fit it all in with the way that our practice is growing. And so being as efficient as possible, which we've achieved by being largely a digital practice, Grin is just like the perfect complement to that for monitoring our patients.
All right, so now you know why we decided to go with Grin, as far as why we needed to do some type of a digital platform. Now we're going to tell you the advantages of Grin and why we selected it. So one of the major reasons is because of the better visualization of the teeth digitally. As you can see from those initial photos that we showed you, I wasn't able to see anything on those virtual appointments. So we needed to figure out a way to be able to visualize the teeth from an amazing view without seeing the patient physically in the office, but seeing them as well as if they were actually in the office. So as you can see from this video, this is actually one of our patients submitting one of their grins. And this is exactly what we see when we open this up. It's a beautiful, beautiful image. And, you know, we looked at a couple of other companies, but Grin just had everything that we needed. It had the visualization. It had the price that we were looking for. It had the patient management software where we're able to actually text with the patients. So visualization was just a huge, huge reason for us. Another main reason for going digital with Grin is that we can actually accommodate more patients. So all of those patients that were taking up retainer checks, that were taking up observation appointments, that were taking up aligner checks, these are all now virtual appointments. So in a later slide, we're going to actually, you know, show you the breakdown of money, how we're actually able to save money this way. We're able to see more patients now because we're seeing about 40 patients a week virtually. They're not taking up our chair time. So it's allowing us to put more patients in that packed schedule because we're taking out patients that were physically there and they're now virtual. Also, another advantage of Grin is that we're able to detect problems in non-tracking early. So I even had a patient today who was in aligner number 16 and she submitted a Grin scan and she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "You know what, upper and lower 2 to 2 really need a little bit more movement and I'm not ready for you to switch, wear those trays for another week, then submit another Grin scan in a week, and I'll let you know if it's good to switch. What would have happened, that patient would have just kept switching, and then we would have seen them in 6 weeks or so, and we would have scanned for refinement, or they would have come into the office and wasted time for like a 2-minute appointment that probably would have taken an hour out of their day and out of work. So it's just all these things that they're so huge. And we're able to also triage emergencies. Patient says, oh, this tooth is hurting, or this bracket is off, or this is going on. Do I need to come in? Submit a Grin scan, show us what's going on, and we'll let you know, yeah, if you have to come in. So those are just some of the main advantages for us. Now, for the patient, the advantages of Grin are that it's allowing them direct communication between them and us. They're able to text us and reach out. And I truly think, and I think Deb even made the comment, she sometimes feels closer to the patients on Grin, even though we're not seeing them physically, we're connecting with them on that, direct interpersonal level that sometimes can feel rushed in the office and is not feeling that way on Grin. And we know people live on their phones today, and they're always available that way. So if a patient is able to be like, doc, like this is broken, what do I do? And you're able to get back to them in 2 minutes, it's huge. It also increases accountability for the patients. They are wearing their aligners, they're wearing their elastics because they know that we're following up on them and we're checking to make sure things are working. It's also allowed us to manage some high anxiety, high maintenance patients. We do have some patients that are like, I don't feel like I've seen a change, and what's going on now? So we've given them a Grin scan, or Grin scope rather, and they're able to scan and then check and monitor their progress. And we're like, look at your scan from way back when, and look at where you are in your 10th scan and see that improvement.
I like that you say 10 for the high anxiety patients. They're at like 120 scans.
Yeah. Yes, they're slightly high maintenance. I'm not saying there are adults, but they are adults. It also allows us remote treatment of patients, those kids that are in college or that are taking trips. I have a lot of work from home patients too that don't want to work from home in Pennsylvania and want to work from home, in China or somewhere. So we're able to monitor them and give them all their trays and see them when they're back home, every 6 months. Allows us to reduce those in-office visits. How many times do you get told my kid's in advanced classes, they can't miss school? And, this is one of the huge things or selling points during the consult that I say, I only have to see you like once every 3 to 4 months for a quick visit. The rest is all virtual. And as you can see, it's definitely much more visually stimulating and easier to use than those spoon retractors that the patients were using. And then finally, the advantages for the practice. Again, HIPAA compliant. It warms my HIPAA management heart. Ability to grow our practice without physically increasing our size. Overhead is saved, and we will actually show you a slide later on by how much we're saving. If you can actually put a number to each 30-minute chair visit, we're reducing our in-office visits and saving money. And again, it's a selling point, the consultation. Moms and dads, their faces just light up when they see their kids don't have to miss school or sports, and even adults that don't have to miss school. It's a really huge thing. And here's the slide I was talking about. We spoke with Kevin Dorr, our rep, and he helped us put this together just to show you. And these are all based on average case prices of about $5,000. And again, an average chair time cost of $250 for a half hour. And if you combine how many appointments that, initially we were seeing for our aligner cases and our braces cases and our other OBS, those are for our phase 1 and our observation patients that we were seeing in office, how frequently, and now that we're seeing virtually, we have a total return on investment of, over $124,000. So annually, and I'll let Deb explain that a little bit more too.
Yeah. So Kevin and I went through this exercise to look at this because we started off, like you can see our Grin share of chair, 62% are aligner patients. So we really started off using this strictly for our aligner patients, both adults and teens, both very capable of the technology. And that worked really well for us. We were already comfortable seeing patients every 10 weeks or so with our aligners. And so we've kept up an every 10-week Grin check. but really only seeing patients in the office if we're doing IPR or if we're scanning for additional aligners, or as Courtney mentioned, you know, if we identify a non-tracking issue, we're bringing them into the office. And then we, you know, started giving them out to those couple of high maintenance braces cases. It's actually kind of nice to see that number is only 9, which is terrible. And so there's a couple of them out there, and I have a couple that I even charge for the scope, because I'm like, you know, it's kind of it is an extra service that we're providing, and not necessarily necessary for them, but if it makes them happy, you know, I'm happy to do it. And so then I talked to Kevin, because Grin came out with the mini Grin, and we do a lot of phase 1 in our practice. I mean, it probably makes up like 25 to 30% of our overall patient base. And I was like, you know, I can't decide if we want to give everyone a mini Grin. We had been using the virtual appointment tool on our website still. And Courtney was reviewing those, and everyone was continuing to come in with those terrible photos. And I was like, yeah, but like, we only really do like 1 check for their expansion, if they have an expander, which most of them do. And then it's not until like almost a year later that we're, you know, starting to monitor them between phases. And so he put this together for us so we could get a feel for what we're saving with each visit. And, you know, when I thought about the cost of a Grin scope, you know, the cost of the Grin subscription, if you will, and the chair time cost that we're saving, you know, we decided to just pull the trigger and start giving all of our mini Grins. And we honestly probably just started doing that at like the 4th quarter of 2022. And so we've already handed out almost 60 of them. And, you know, we've gone from seeing those patients on average, like every 4 months, to basically we put in like once a year to see them, which it might not even be that. And, you know, we can see here just like over $100,000 saved, you know, in that return on investment. You know, we've adapted some things in our practice to really make that work. We just switched from Holly retainers to throw retainers, you know, trying to use something that requires less adjustment, as we felt like, yeah, we're seeing people just to tighten their Hollies, but that doesn't even really seem necessary. And this is just, it's just opened up so much chair time in our schedule.
And with our retainer checks too, we initially were seeing them for a full year. We were following them. Now we do just the 1 retainer check, and then we let them graduate. And if they need to reach us, they always can.
Yeah, I think this was sort of inspiration for us and motivation to find other ways to just reduce in-office visits. So same thing, we kind of went from Hollies to Essex retainers for everybody. Ideally not seeing them even an in-office visit for that first retainer check. You know, we do include the cost of any retainer adjustments for the first year. That's been consistent, and we haven't changed that, but now we tell them like just as needed, because we're realizing how much of a waste of time that they were. And, you know, with our aligner patients, they were already doing all the retainer checks via Grin. And so no different to give Essex to patients that were in braces, and really no need to have them come into the office. So that's been, even though we're not necessarily using Grin for all of those braces patients getting Essex retainers, it just sort of changed the systems and protocols in our practice to be another money saver, as well as chair time saver.
And we're already really seeing the changes just in the numbers. I just ran these numbers with our practice management software and saw that in all of 2022, we saw 657 total virtual appointments, Grin scans included. And so far, and this was only just in the first 3 months of 2023, already 269. And I know that number is just only going to increase. So virtual appointments and Grin appointments, more specifically, are our future and are going to just rise exponentially.
Yeah, and we'll show our schedule in just a moment, but historically, Courtney has always done the virtual appointments from the websites, and I've done the Grins. And she was always there with like her long list of patients. And now all of a sudden she gets like 1 and I have like 20 Grins to work on. So
we're going to have to work on
we have to divvy that up again. Yeah. But it's kind of neat just to see that shift in our schedule, to know, like, not that we'll necessarily ever eliminate the piece on our website. It is helpful. But there's so many advantages to the Grin platform, particularly just in maintaining that patient record with images, that I'm glad to see that that's sort of the way our practice has gone.
All right, so now we're going to show you specifically how we grin in our practice, how it works for us.
Talk about this.
Sure.
And so there's so many different ways to incorporate Grin. And I know we're probably flying through this a little bit, so certainly I would love to hear at the end of the presentation if other people have other ideas, or want any more details on what we do. But what we decided was the best way for us was we actually created a third location in our practice management software called Virtual.
And we use Wave ortho software.
Yes, these are screenshots from Wave. I'm sure you can do this with any practice management software though. And so we decided, how many appointments do we want to allow in a week to be virtual? And we started off up until just maybe like 3 months ago, doing all of our virtual appointments on Monday. And we had 24 open spots each week. And that was a number that we felt between the two of us that we can manage reviewing those cases. And we can certainly see as our numbers were showing that we needed to add more time. So just in the last couple of months, we now updated to, instead of doing them on Mondays, which are always a little bit tough because we're catching up on emails and cases that, may have came back to us over the weekend with digital treatment plans. So now we're doing Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we made it 16 appointments each. So it's still manageable for both of us, but now we get another, 8 appointments each week that we potentially can fit in there. And so we tell our patients, when we're scheduling the appointment that, we're putting it in the virtual calendar, there's going to be a time attached to it. Ignore the time. I hope one day our practice management software catches up and we don't have to necessarily, give them a time or send them, a reminder with a time, but we even include that in the reminder, which I'll show on the next slide. And when we schedule the appointment in our software system, we go ahead and also schedule that scan date in Grin. So we do usually always have Grin open on the same, computer screen along with our ClinChecks or our light plans or whatever other, system we're using for that particular patient. And so then this is, just a detail to share with you all, the reminder that we send out to our patient from our practice. I think sometimes just knowing the logistics of how to incorporate that can be helpful. So feel free to screenshot if you'd like. Again, Wave, some limitations, we can't customize, and if anyone uses Wave and I'm wrong, tell us please, but we can't customize the appointment reminders per location. So we just have this asterisk at the bottom to tell people to disregard the time. And I would say, at least in the last year, I don't think we've gotten any questions about that. I think early on, some people were confused, but
they would show up. They're like, "Oh, you're
or they call and they ask." And so I think, if you don't already know this about Grin, one of the most important things to know is this is not a live virtual appointment. This is something we do on our own time. We do not need to sync up the patient. The patient does not need to be available at 8 a.m. And we tell that to the patients when they book the appointments, ideally, please do it that day that you're scheduled. If you do it the day before, the day after, whatever, we're still going to respond. We usually say, we might need 1 or 2 business days to get back to them, just so we feel a little bit less pressure. But as soon as someone submits a Grin, we get notified by email. We get a notification if it's a scan. We get a notification if it's a message.
Or a photo too.
Or a photo. So the notifications do distinguish between that. So I will always just real quick on my phone, open up a message. If I notice anything that seems like, if it were me, I would appreciate a quick response. I hop onto the website or on my phone and respond. Otherwise, I just wait till, I'm back in the office to respond to a review of the Grin scan. And this is the reminders on how Grin sends out to the patients. So these are Courtney, so I'll let her kind of.
I was a Grin. I was the guinea pig for our office. So I was a patient when I was treating myself with light force braces. So you get a little reminder that says it's time to send a new scan. You get a text message, you get an email, and then on the very end on the app, actually, it'll say it's time to take a scan. So it's pretty hard to miss. And then if you do miss your scan, it reminds you and it'll keep going and reminding you. So it's pretty hard to forget. So we, definitely, I feel like we overkill it with adding it with our practice management software, but it's just our way of tracking it, so we can track it for numbers. And then I know that Grin is in talks with some practice management softwares to actually integrate it. So that's going to be the future of Grin, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. So that way, like all of our notes, all of our photos and videos and everything that's on the Grin or software rather, is going to automatically convert to our practice manager software. So
that's the hope.
We're excited about that.
Yeah, I know there's probably a lot of practices out there that may not be scheduling the appointments in their practice management software when they're, scheduling them in Grin. But for us, like we've been just trying so hard the last couple of years to stay on top of our numbers, stay on top of, the number of patients without scheduled appointments. And it would just be so much more work ultimately on the back end for our administrative staff to look at, well, does someone have a Grin appointment scheduled and not an appointment in the office? So we always just tie the two together, and that has worked out really well for us. And we do actually run a report every Thursday. And if our admin sees that there's patients on the virtual schedule that their appointments haven't been attended, meaning they weren't completed, they send them a particular, message just to remind them to do their virtual appointment. And then so sometimes we'll get an influx on Friday from earlier in the week, but we get it done. And I think our numbers, and Jen, who's on here, probably can even speak to this later on, but I feel like our numbers of patients without appointments is on the lowest end that it's ever been. So going this virtual route can definitely be a little scary in that regard, that you might lose more track of patients, but I think it's actually been better for us. And particularly even for those observation phase 2 pending patients that can easily get lost in the system. This is super easy for them. Sometimes we'll have one that's scheduled in office and the parent will email or call and say, I don't think that they're ready yet. For anything else, they still have this baby tooth, do we have to come in? And we'll just say, send a scan and we'll review it and go from there. So everybody wins in that regard. Just more details on how we schedule the Grin appointment. Again, this is specific to Wave. So we also created 2 different appointment types, Grin versus virtual appointment. Virtual appointment is the tab on our website. Again, just to distinguish, our patients that have a Grin scope or don't, we do put it in their patient chart that they have a Grin. Also would hope eventually Wave has a better way, I guess, for us to track that, because we can't run a report with that information at this time. We probably just need to think about how to do it and, figure out the system. But we put in the little note section here, the appointment type. It just allows us, at first glance of our schedule, to kind of know, what we're expecting in Grin that day. And, I think ultimately it just helps our staff too, that they're not just seeing Grin and have no idea, is this patient 8 or is this patient, 70? So it's just a nice little addition that, since so many appointment types are ultimately falling under Grin or under a virtual appointment, we just provide that little detail in the notes section there. And then this again is on the right side of the screen is just showing the options in the Grin software. So we can choose the treatment type, which are right now just aligner, braces, or other. So we put all of our phase 1 as other. Treatment status is either active, observation, and retention. Probably Kevin and the team can speak a little bit more to that, but I believe if they have an observation status, they get 5 scans a year. Retention, I can't recall offhand. And I'm not sure how they count towards your total number of patients in your subscription. So I'll also let Kevin answer that later. And then you can set the next scan date. You can set up, weekly scans if you want. We typically do custom and, just set the scan date as needed. Hopefully eventually Grin will have a feature to disable scans, which will be really helpful, like when we're in, waiting for refinement aligners, things like that, or to disable people once we are done following them in their active retention period. But so far, we're still early enough in our use of it that has not been an issue. We haven't overrun our, subscription numbers, anything like that. But I know there's just so many, great things coming down the pipeline software wise. Onboarding our new Grin patients. So we do this chair side. Sometimes our team will do this if they're waiting for us to come over, as to not, waste any time. or they're just going to do it when they're going over instructions, because we do this at like an initial aligner delivery. We do this at initial expander delivery. We sign up the patient. Those under 18, we put the parent or guardian information in. So that does maintain, you know, the HIPAA compliance piece of this. And Grin just added actually that you can link accounts, which is awesome. So, because we certainly have a lot of family members, and now we used to be like, do you have another email and another email? So we can have like 3 separate accounts. Now they can have 1 account and they can toggle between them, which is awesome. We do keep a sample Grin scope in like our instruction bin with our floss threaders and everything else to show the patients how they work. I will say their patients are just always wowed. And then we usually suggest to our patients to take a scan later that day, gives them a chance to get used to the new technology. We'll ultimately give them a baseline to look back on during the course of their treatment. And for us, it's like a little trigger. If we see a message that, you know, we know someone that was on our schedule that just started treatment that day and they send a scan, we just hop onto the chat, send them a little message. And I just feel as like a practice builder, it takes me 1 minute and goes such a long way. And I mean, I know the doctor I bought my practice from, he used to like sit and make phone calls at the end of the day to check on people. Like, I do not have time for that. I can literally do this while I'm like sitting with my kids at the dinner table or while they're playing around getting ready for bed. So it's just a nice, easy way to connect with our patients.
And we have these saved Grin response templates as well that makes it even easier. So at least I know Deb's been doing the majority of the Grin responses, but there's a lot of things that we repeat a lot in our messaging. So we can make our own response templates, and then Grin also has their own. They also have some great ones that show how to brush teeth that you can send to the patients that have videos, how to take care of their aligners, all different things. So it's a really great time saver too.
Yeah, I use that at the end of every Grin appointment. I just put in when their next appointment is and click enter, and that's it.
So these are the different patients that we give Grin scopes to. Our bread and butter pretty much are our aligner patients. They will receive a Grin scope the day that we start their aligner treatment and give their attachments. The only in-office visits we will see them for are for IPR, or if we're going to start elastics with them. Sometimes we even show them how the elastics are to be worn, and we'll send them home with the elastics. And then we'll say, okay, you're ready to start the elastics. And again, they don't have to come in for the office. So again, it's just all about saving that chair time. And like Deb said, that very first day, we tell them, go home, play with the Grin scope and submit a scan. And then we just write back like, looking good, enjoy. We'll see you in about 8 to 10 weeks. And then definitely we do more frequently. We do have a couple of, those high maintenance patients that want to know if they're okay to switch. And so they can definitely do it more often, or if we're
Courtney
more comfortable.
all of those, yeah. The aligner ones.
I love them. And then, of course, if we have some teenagers that we just feel are not compliant, instead of, I don't want to say wasting our time having to come into the office, but it's chair time to come in, and it just takes 2 seconds.
Babysitting them.
Exactly. So those are definitely our bread and butter.
Sorry, I just want to step back on the aligner patients. So the way that Grin has it set up for aligner patients, they're prompted to put in what aligner number they're in. Yep. So it's not like we're there going back and forth having to ask that question. And then I think Grin must advise them, and again, Grin folks, you can chime in. I know we used to tell them in the beginning, but I think once you added the different categories, they get a prompt to do a scan with their aligners in and a scan with their aligners out. Yeah. So we're very closely monitoring tracking, and then we're also just overall looking at, the tooth alignment and the bite. And so we review those 2 scans, and I don't know if we have any images of this in our presentation. So just mention it, that Grin does have an AI scan summary. So it has like 5 screenshots essentially from the video. So sometimes I'll glance at that for, the tracking. If I know overall it's been like a patient who's been really good. I mean, the Grin scan is only 34 seconds. I know I do have 34 seconds to spare, but sometimes I can take 5 and glance through the aligner scan, just through the screenshots, and then I'll watch the tooth scan in full to evaluate the bite and how the teeth are fitting together.
This is just a case that we do Transformation Tuesday posts, and I was looking at this case and I was like, I wonder how many times he actually saw this patient in the office physically. And it was only 5, and that included the consult and the debond. So pretty much they came in to have their delivery and then for refinement and then another delivery, and then that was it. And I mean, it's just,
And they were so happy.
Exactly. It's just a huge, not a straightforward case that we were able to only take up 5 visits.
I know we've kind of mentioned this a bunch already about the fixed appliance patients. All 9 of them are either high maintenance, they're surgical patients. We have a couple right now going at our SARPI patients. And so like where we'd want to be checking them more frequently, but how annoying to have to come into those office for those quick checks. And we can really monitor everything with Grin. It's huge with those patients. Hygiene patients. And I did get this idea, I want to say from Jared Jean Quinto, who I'm not sure if he's on here or not. I do believe he was signed up to charge a fee. Yeah, we saw him at Orthopreneurs and to charge a fee for weekly hygiene checks. And so we have offered that to a couple of parents and patients that, like we really should consider taking the braces off. If you want to keep them on, we can, do some really close monitoring. But that obviously, that's on our time. And so charging anywhere from, $25 a month to $99 a month, whatever you feel comfortable with in your area. But hygiene's important. Parents appreciate that. And then Grin has, a collaboration with Oral-B. And so you can literally click through and make recommendations about their products through the chat function and or share videos about hygiene. But I think personally, like the most effective thing is probably to either do a review of the scan or a screenshot of the scan and point to where they're missing. And you can send that back as a photo. And then it's on record. We had an incident with a patient who like disappeared on us for a while, adult female, had perio issues, referred her to perio. She didn't go. Then she saw some perio. I didn't recommend, like, I didn't even know, we didn't refer her to. He told her, yes, she's going to lose a tooth. She's melting down, of course, on a Friday night in the summertime. And, we went back and forth over the chat. I had all the records where we, talked about go see the periodontist. We have some concerns, this and that. And it was all there in Grin it was just made it so easy to have that communication and not just the physical notes, but also the visual of what she was looking like at each one of those stages. And ultimately, she has not lost a tooth. She had some grafting. She's fine. She went for a different opinion and we had a great relationship out of it. Like there's no poor Google reviews, everything, she was, I think, probably even satisfying for her that on a Friday night, she could send a message and I responded. I didn't let her stir on it all weekend. I didn't start it all weekend, just got back to her and moved on. So there's just so many benefits for patient communication and for patient record.
I think we felt so protected having that
100%.
record on a HIPAA compliant platform to say, we told you multiple times and it's here.
Yeah.
So this is a patient that ended up being a really unique situation. You have the patient that actually wore her elastics too well. Class 3 high angle patient came in for her visit and was severely class 2, had actually distalized her lower molar so much that her 7's extruded. And we immediately were like, what the heck happens here? So we were like, all right, we're going to give you some class 2 elastics, but we don't want you to wear them too much. And we want to catch you at the moment where you get back to class 1. So we gave her a Grin scope and we sent her home. And this is actually visualization of one of her first scans. Literally, I think it was like a week later. And she was wearing some class 2 elastics and we were just monitoring her and we're like, all right, we're seeing some improvement. This is good. Keep going. And as you can see on the right side, this was exactly what we texted her. Thanks for sending the scan. Teeth are looking great. Keep going. Have a great weekend. And then we set her up for another scan in a week. And then that's the following visual, as you can see. And now she's class 1. 2 weeks later, we were like, stop. Come into the office now. We're ready to see you for your next step. So Grin really saved us couple,
like a back and forth. Like she probably would have just overdone it again and
or having her come in, you know,
Yeah.
from school for quick checks. So Grin really ended up being a huge lifesaver. And it took 2 seconds. So other patients who grin, and this is what Deb had said that we really started implementing with all of our phase 1 patients. As soon as, and we do a lot of phase 1 treatment here, it's usually an expander and then sometimes interlimited braces. We give it the day that they get their expander, they'll get the mini grin scope for their little mouths. And then they take that with them. After the debond, all of their monitoring appointments are now virtual. And then patients that didn't start with the grin scopes with their expander that are phase 1 patients, we've been giving them out at the debond. We've been giving them their throw retainers. They, again, don't really need adjustments, having them submit their grin scans, and it's just opened up so much chair time for us. And then again, retention patients, we've been transitioning to just having 1 retainer check, having them be Essex retainers. So really no adjustments. And again, just opening up that chair time, and Grin has allowed us that. So finally, we're going to show you how our patients have responded to Grin. This is a patient that I interacted with directly. He is one of our SARPI patients, and he's actually in Brias, which is lingual braces. He was a hockey player and kept breaking his back brackets on his mouth guard. And he texted on Grin and was literally having a panic attack because he's like, it broke. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And I saw the message, like Dad said, it emails us immediately, saw the message. I wrote him back within 2 minutes, and he was like, oh my God, thank goodness. Like, I was so worried. When was I going to see you? What was going to happen? I didn't want to have to wait for the emergency phone call and this and that. And he came in the next day as we fixed, and he literally said, I love Grin. It was a lifesaver. Went from absolute panic mode to feeling calm and taken care of within 2 minutes. And I immediately emailed the Grin team because I was like, this is what Grin is doing. It's amazing. So he was very grateful for that. And then another patient, I know Deb talked with her specifically.
Oh yeah. Just again, being able to go back and look at their initial scans, or even just when they see their scans of the teeth. It's like when patients come in for a consult and you put up their photos on their screen and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize things were that bad. So same idea with the Grin scans, you know, patients now have that image of their teeth that they would never have been able to capture otherwise. We've tried, you know, taking photos on our phones, and one thing of another, you know, when my son lost a tooth, like you take pictures, it never is great quality. The scan quality is so good. So this was just more feedback that we received from our patients. And this is again, a screenshot directly from the Grin chat.
And I know Grin is also going to be coming out with very soon a way for us actually to market this as well. So patients can like kind of do their own transformations. They'll get the before and after. And then it'll be actually tailored to your practice. So it will have your logo or your brand there. And then the patient will be kind of advised or pushed or suggested to post that. And then it's such a great way to market your practice as well.
And the next slide is a video that we actually did, like a video presentation with Grin back in like 21, I think. They came to our practice. We, you know, talked, some of our staff talked, and then we had a few patients who were just really enthused about Grin early on, share their experience. And so this is our patient Kelly, who, you know, adult female, I think early 30s, Invisalign patient, who shared her experience with Grin.
I think we're having a little trouble with the sound.
Oh no. Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Can you not hear it?
No, we can't hear the video, but
Oh, bummer.
yeah, this
Well,
one
basically she's saying Grin is awesome.
Maybe we can share the video with you, Jillian, if you're able to play it. I don't know.
Yeah, we actually have this one posted
Yeah,
on,
you
on our
saved this.
Instagram
Yeah,
page.
that's where I got it from.
Yes, yes. So, hey, some homework. Head over to our Instagram page and check out this
Exactly.
amazing testimonial.
She's a world traveler. So she was able to do a lot of her monitoring remotely with her Grin. She actually makes a cute joke that her Grin has been to more places than her dog has. And it just really made her treatment efficient. She was not in the office. I think she said what?
I think she was in twice in 4 months because we caught some, poor tracking early on. And so it was like a benefit for there. We brought her in for a scan and then that was it. Then we like sent her on her way. I feel like we barely saw her in the office.
But she really liked it. So it's the end.
And so now you know that when the Grin scans come through, there is no sound associated with them because you did not miss any sound in the earlier videos, which I guess I never really thought about, but it's nice. There's no distraction when, viewing those photos as opposed to like our virtual appointments where we see, TVs in the background, kids with their shirts off, like mirrors. I mean, you name it. The Grin scan is just very, very straightforward.
And that's it. Thank you guys so much for attending. And again, thank you to Adam and Jillian and Kevin and everybody at the Grin team for giving us this honor of presenting our experience. And, we can open this up to some questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation this evening. Before we open it over to the live Q&A, I just would like to introduce Kevin Dory. Kevin Dory's on the Grin team. He's just going to make a quick announcement and then we'll get into the live Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Jillian. And thank you so much, Dr. Parnes, Dr. Rubin. Great to see you on the other end of the camera, as usual. Amazing job tonight. And thank you so much to everybody who is open to joining the webinar this evening. For those of you who are not Grin users, you will be receiving an email from one of our Grin representatives here within the next 24 hours. That email will outline pricing and different educational materials. Highly recommend having you schedule a quick demo with your Grin representative to walk through the platform a little bit more in depth. And then please let us know if you have any additional questions in the meantime. That's what we're here to do. And obviously take advantage of working with the great doctors we've got on from tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. Okay. So we're going to open up the Q&A. We've got a couple of minutes here. Feel free to ask the doctors or any of the team members that are on here this evening some questions. Feel free to come off mute and ask those questions. Anybody? Oh, there is a question here in the chat. From, I believe, Jer. So when you add it all up, what is the average cost per comprehensive patient and phase 1 patient?
I'll jump on this. So we've got two separate types of pricing within Grin. So one of the models that we work through with our pricing actually comes with a remote care specialist, but we're averaging anywhere from, depending on what pricing structure you're on, anywhere from 60 to 150 per patient from a comprehensive perspective. But you'll get more with that higher program because someone will actually be reviewing those scans for you. We will provide a remote care specialist to work through that with your team. So you'll get a little bit more as well with that pricing structure, but we do have a lower end pricing structure as well. If you wanted to monitor those scans in-house, that's what Dr. Debbie and Dr. Courtney are doing there on their side. But happy to talk through more of that pricing structure with the Grin representative as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. We have another Kevin here in the chat asking a question. Do you present Grin as an option for aligner patients, or is it just standard and they can opt out if they want?
I would say, so we talk about it in the consult for all of our patients, and we do I guess in some ways give it as an option, but we kind of just give it to them. And I think that almost all of them will do at least their first appointment, virtually. And then if they feel like they really strongly about wanting to come in, we'll, allow them to do so. But then there, those ones that like want to come in the office, essentially those are your high maintenance patients. So I think that it's still worth them having a Grin. We don't feel like we've lost out by giving them, the scope to them. I feel like early on, we were very much like, you can come in virtually or in person, but now we're much more like, we're going to see you through Grin, and we just really go right into the advantages. So there's not even an opportunity for it to be, argued, or I prefer a different way. And again, I think because we're mentioning it in the consult, and if there was someone in the consult who like had a poor reaction to it, we would note it on the chart so that at the delivery, we were not, pushing it or offering it.
Okay, and we have a couple more questions here in the chat. When do y'all recommend to send the initial invitation? And what do you recommend when patients are not compliant with scans or responding to messages?
So we usually do it the day that we start their treatment with the Invisalign. So the assistant chair side will get the patient's parents' information or the patient's information if they are over 18 to actually send them that invite. Some of the patients will download the app right there, but the majority of them wait till they get home and do it. I would say, at least as far as the patient's not responding, I don't really think we have that much of a problem. I think we have, as you can see, it's kind of hard to ignore.
There's so many pings. And then again, we have that, sort of system in our place in our office, since we are putting them in our actual schedule, that if we see they haven't completed the scan, then, our office administrator, our scheduling coordinator is messaging them directly in addition to Grin. And so we really haven't had an issue with non-compliance. I think there's just so many ways they're being targeted and reached. We probably have worse compliance for our in-office appointments.
Yeah.
100% we do.
So we started charging missed office fees. But I would say, there are a handful of patients that are just like, nope, I can't do it. I won't. And so we know, and we'll see them in the office, and that's fine. But I don't really feel like we're chasing patients down to do the scans by any means.
No, not at all.
Great. Do you think that without Grin, you would have needed to hire more staff, set up more chairs, etc., just to match your growth?
100%.
Yes, we would have had to start working more, which we really don't want to do. We want to both work 3.5 days a week. We, have lives and families, and I'm sure most of you are experiencing this too. Hiring good staff is really hard right now. So we have an amazing team. It's really hard to grow them. So we had to figure out a way around it, a way to grow ourselves without physically growing.
I mean, an average day in our office is probably 45 patients. If both offices are open, we're probably an average of like 30 to 35 in each office. Again, we're limited by the number of chairs and the staff that we have. So essentially doing, approximately 30 patients a week virtually is like another day. And there's a lot of overhead in that day. There's time we just don't have, and we are doing, so I guess we didn't touch on this too much, but we're, such a digital practice. So we do, it's all indirect bonding with Lightforce. And then we are mostly Invisalign users for our aligner patients. And so there's a lot that our assistants are doing, our clinical assistants, while we're in the office. And that's when we're working on digital treatment plans. It's when we're going through these Grin appointments. So that allows us the time to get this stuff done during our work hours, which again, being digital has so many other benefits for our practice. We wouldn't have it any other way at this point in time. But it's just a great complement for that. We literally would have nowhere to put these patients. With the amount of growth that we've had, we've grown probably between 10 and 15% each year over the last 3 years. And we just can't accommodate that in the office at, the size and staff that we have.
Great. Do we have any other questions? I don't see anything else in the chat, but anybody else have anything they want to ask before we end the session? Okay, well, I think on that note, we'll let you all continue on with your Thursday evening. Dr. Debbie, Dr. Courtney, thank you so much again for your presentation this evening. Just so our attendees know, there will be a live recording available of tonight's session. So if you have colleagues or you have staff members, other team members that would like to give this a watch, we will make sure to share the link with you. Thank you all so much for jumping on. Have a wonderful
Thank you, everyone.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
I guess we said, yeah.